Welcome to Reddit Aliens. Night shift gas station workers, what's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to you while on shift? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy.
I don't know about creepy, but it was weird. I worked the graveyard shift in an inner city gas station. There were a few homeless guys who would come in. Mostly they were older and nice guys to deal with. One guy would come in every night about the same time and stand in front of the drink fridge for 10 minutes or so. He would agonize over his choice. He would go to pick up a can, then change his mind and shut the fridge door. Then stand for a few more minutes and stare. Eventually he would choose a drink, most often a can of Fanta. Then he would pay with 5 and 10-cent coins. One night he came in and the usual dance ensued. He eventually picked out a Fanta and paid with his low-denomination coins, then left. A few hours later, he came back. This was unusual. He went to the fridge and grabbed 3 cans of Fanta, no waiting, staring. He had never bought more than 1 can at a time before. He put the cans on the counter and went back and got a few bags of snack food, chips, chocolate bars, etc. Then he came back and pulled out a stack of $50 notes. Had to be a couple of thousand there. I was a bit stunned. Next day, he was back with the 5 and 10-cent coins again. I had a 300-pound man come in and tell me he was looking for God. He walked over to the soda and started downing Mountain Dews. Then he got butt naked and laid on the floor and pissed everywhere, including on himself. When the police arrived, they told me he was apparently off his meds, and they'd been searching for him for a while. He broke the windows out of a church a few blocks down the road. That was one of the stranger nights of my life. I wasn't working, but my mom worked the graveyard shift and would have me sleeping on a cot behind the counter by her so she could take me to school right after work. I woke up to use the bathroom, saw an old, probably homeless man walk in. A rat fell off of him, scurried after him for a second, then died. Alone at 1:30 a.m., cleaning the store. I'd already cleaned the men's bathroom, wiped mirrors and faucets, gave the bowl a scrub, etc. Came back with the mop to do the floors, and there was a complete outfit in the toilet with a massive shit on it. Shoes first, then socks, jocks, tracksuit pants, underwear, t-shirt, and a massive shit. I ran to the office, locked myself in, and reviewed the security footage. It only showed me in the store the entire time. No customers, and I had to manually press the green exit button to open the doors for people to get in and out from my safety cage. Boss always did a site walk with me before they left to make sure I was alone. The next night, it was shit on the stall door. Same deal, all alone. Nothing after that except 10 glass bottles flying off the shelves in front of 2 police officers and shattering. Oddly, still my favorite job ever.
Well, if after all of that, that's still your favorite job ever, I'd love to hear about your least favorite job ever.
Not creepy, but indeed scary. My first job, second night of working nights, so I still had a trainer working with me. A guy walks in with his throat slit asking to use the phone. Pretty stunned, I just said, "Yeah, but I'm gonna call 911 first." He told me that that's what he was going to do, so he'll just be outside sitting in his gray van. I guess his wife got mad and tried to kill him, and he somehow got out. Never heard more from it. A few months later, a big biker guy came in with road rash all over his bald head and face. I freaked and was like, "Dude, are you alright?" He then informed me that he was fine. He was just on break from the haunted trail down the road. For some reason, it scared me worse than the guy who was actually injured. I didn't work at a gas station, but I did work graveyard shift at a warehouse doing security. The job entailed sitting in a box all night, watching our 4 cameras, listening to the radio, and logging in a semi-trailer perhaps once every 3 to 4 hours. The town itself was fairly sketchy, and I was surrounded by bars and railroad tracks, so I frequently had to chase folks off the property, including a terminated employee of the warehouse who was looking to gain entry to ask for his job back at 1 a.m. on a holiday weekend. One morning around 3 a.m. I had dozed off slightly, and the sound of screaming very nearby startled me awake. As soon as I was alerted and frantically checking the cameras, it stopped, and I decided I'd dreamed it. I nervously turned on my radio and started reading. About 5 minutes later, I heard it again, and it sounded like it came from the alley between the buildings. I froze, suitably terrified. It didn't sound like a drunk person goofing off or a domestic disturbance. One of the houses in the area was known for this. It was distinctly male voice, screaming in a ragged, gaspy, repeated burst that would trail off into words that I couldn't understand, and at one point, the most hair-raising psychotic laughter. It was a dark and rainy night, and I couldn't see anything on the cameras, so being a tiny 19-year-old female with a bit of a chihuahua complex, I grabbed my flashlight, phone, and pepper spray and searched the grounds for the source of the screaming. As I was returning, one of the regular night truck drivers pulled into the lot, and I got him to search the premises with me as well. We heard it again while we were in the warehouse in the back part of the building near the train yard. It sounded like whoever or whatever it was heading up the tracks. The seasoned tough trucker I was with said, "Jesus, that's creepy. Stay in the building tonight, and if you get in trouble for it, I'll talk to your boss in the morning." There's probably not much more of an explanation than it being a drugged out or mentally ill hobo, but I wish I could convey what a terrifying experience it was. Just did. Worked for 7-Eleven corporate. Every employee has to spend 2 weeks working in-store. Overnight shift came, and we were helping, but typically it's a single person unloading the entire truck and loading the entirety of the donuts while assisting customers overnight. Creepy part is that one night a guy came in to help as a customer. He was arrested just up the road being wanted for murder that night. Not creepy, but the most interesting thing to happen to me on night shift. It was not terribly unusual to have people pull into our parking lot when they got pulled over for speeding, because it was one of the few brightly lit, mostly empty lots on that stretch of road. So one night, a guy pulls into our light with a cop car right behind him, and it seemed pretty routine until the cop got out of his car, pulled a gun, and started yelling at the guy to get out of the car. Then like 5 more cop cars pulled in behind him, some also pulling guns, some getting the canine dogs out, and I decided it would be wise to lock the door until this blew over. The cops took the guy into custody without incident, popped their heads into the store to let me know they were going to tow the guy's car so it wasn't blocking the dumpster, and left. I checked the news a few days later, and apparently the guy had been dealing drugs in the Quality Dairy parking lot up the road, and led the cops on a high-speed chase before surrendering in front of my store. When I was 17, I worked in an all-subs in a small town in Texas. My shift was midnight to 8 in the morning. Nothing ever happened all night. A few customers, but in a town of only a couple thousand people, it was slow. The farmers started coming in for breakfast burritos and coffee between 4 and 6. I cleaned the store, mopped floors, bagged ice, and started cooking burritos for in the morning. One night, 2 guys came in at about 2 a.m. They just kept walking the aisles. We were only 3 people in the store. I finally asked if I could help them find something. They replied that they needed directions to another town close by. I told them how to get there, and they left. About half an hour later, I decided to take out the trash, so I took the big metal bar off the back door and opened it to the alley. The 2 guys were parked in the alley, and as soon as I opened the door, they started their car and drove off. I was 17 and terrified the rest of the night, but never saw them again. Not a worker, but a customer. I used to have to travel across a few states to see my mom. Well, I always drove through a small part of West Virginia. Before I continue, let me just say that parts of West Virginia are beautiful, and most of the time the people are really nice. But like everywhere else, there's a small portion of the creepy and intimidating. Anyways, I had to stop a few times, either on my way to or coming from her house to get gas in West Virginia. Always during the day, because in these parts gas stations aren't always self-serve and rarely open late. This one time, I made a few detours to sightsee, and it was dark, and my gas light was on. I still had about 300 miles or so to go. I had to stop somewhere. I ended up stopping at the next gas station that was in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by woods and run down. I parked under one of the lights next to a pump and saw that it was not self-service and did not accept cards. I would have to go in. No big deal, normally. I look around and there's no other cars, few lights, one of which lights the front of the rundown shop, and, of course, it is flickering. The windows are dirty and opaque, so I can't see in, but there's this neon open sign on the door. I get maybe 10 feet from my car and stop. I just kind of stare at the shop, thinking to myself about how this doesn't feel right. It's weird. My cell doesn't have service here. I just don't like it. I look around assessing my surroundings, and it's just screaming horror movie. I get back in my car and decide I'll try again somewhere else, or take the next exit and look for something civilized, or I'll run out of gas and sleep in my car until daybreak and walk somewhere with cell service. Anything would be better than going in there. Luckily, in a few miles, I see an exit and take it, and followed a country road into a small town with a 24-hour gas station that didn't seem to deliver and see. There was probably nothing wrong with that place, and I probably creeped out the employee if they could see out of the disgusting window. But I trust my gut, and when something doesn't feel right, or is just too obviously horror movie moments, I try to avoid it.
Following your gut is never a bad idea, and you don't have to explain it. I get it. Good job.
A store I worked at for way too long was a convenient location for county officers to exchange custody, and once at around 2 a.m., the guy in handcuffs was bouncing all over the place while looking at me and yelling, "I know you, I know you, I thought you'd be dead by now." Another time, a couple asked to use the bathroom, which was accessed by passing through our office or kitchen area, so I tried to be selective when giving permission. They seemed nice, so I said they could. Everything seemed okay as they went in. A short time passed, and they left with thanks. It wasn't until hours later that I noticed a bit of poo hanging off the rubber hook of the plunger. Ugh. Yet another time, the manager arrived to relieve me in the morning, but wanted me to throw away the trash bag that was sitting in her usual parking spot. I didn't see anything like that when I took the boxes out earlier, so someone must have left it there recently. I wondered why they didn't just put it in the dumpster, as it was literally 5 feet away. As I go out, the first thing I notice is the pool of blood leaking all over our parking lot from it. After some timid poking with a stick, it turned out to be a deer carcass, and many more. Fun times. Worked in a crappy Chevron station. One Halloween night I got asked to do a shift in a nearby store we called the Coffin. It was 8 pumps and one tiny single room building that was about 4 feet by 4 feet. Just enough room for the register, cigarettes, and a stool. Also in a shitty neighborhood, so I'm an idiot and I leave the pillbox to have a cigarette, and a guy pulls up to get gas. He starts talking to me and says he just came from a party. Says I have to see his costume. I say sure, because he seems harmless and I'm an idiot. He reaches into the back seat and pulls out a shotgun, a real one. I play it cool, as I think if I stay friendly he won't blow my brains all over the outside of the bulletproof glass as an ironic tribute to my stupidity. He starts chattering about how he bought it a week ago and took it dove hunting that morning. Says everyone at the party thought it was cool, then puts it back in the back of his car. At this point, I begin shaking and quietly ask him if he realizes he just pulled a shotgun out in public at a gas station. He turns paler than I am at that moment and loudly states, "I'm a dumbass." He proceeds to apologize and even offer me a beer. Turned out to be a cool dude, just kinda clueless. Still scared the shit out of me. A couple months later, I'm doing graveyard at my home store, and I see 4 guys walk in looking pretty gangsta, all in black hoodies with hoods up. They go straight to the back of the store and group up talking to each other. They keep looking at me. At this point, I know I'm about to get robbed, as one of them looks out the window and says, "Oh shit!" They bolt out the door as cops and SWAT gear come flooding through the parking lot. Guys get tackled and arrested. Cops tell me they had just robbed 2 other stores and shot a clerk up the road. One cop was driving from a crime scene and saw them enter as he sat at a traffic light in an unmarked car. Pure effing luck. I quit that night. Not a gas station, but in college I worked at an advanced Autoparts. My store was previously a CarQuest that closed at 7. We mainly sold to commercial customers who closed at 5 or 6, so we were dead from 6 to close. When Advanced took over, they extended our hours to 9. One night, a man came in and started screaming and running around, grabbed a small child that was there with their dad. My coworker and I took the guy down and called the police. He was a routine OD for them, knew the guy by his first name. They treated him and released him from the hospital with no charges. The child was traumatized. I was stocking the beer cooler after sales ended at 3 a.m. The doorbell apparently quit working, and I didn't hear anyone come in. Cooler door flew open, and a cop with his gun drawn and pointed was standing there. Scared the piss out of me. I was working at a gas station in Germany for a few years. One night, some dudes come in on their way to a party or so. After grabbing a bunch of candy and alcohol, one of them came to my register and paid. He was a bit loud, yelling and talking to me about how high he is right now. When I didn't react as he wanted me to, he came up to me with cocaine, saying that he thinks that I think he wouldn't have the balls to take it now in front of my eyes. I said that I really believe he'd do it, but he really wanted to do a €500 bet. Taking a €500 bill out of his pocket, using it to snort his line, he started screaming like, "Yeah man, you see, you were right, I've done it." Then he threw the €500 bill at me and left. Cool?
This kind of sounds like something that would be in an American film using like a cliche German type Euro guy, like into like techno. I don't know. It's the vibe I got.
Not a worker, but a bystander. I was walking in because I was on a long road trip, trying to get some food. The guy in the 7-Eleven looked to be in his early 20s or so. There was one other guy in the shop, but I couldn't see his face through his biker helmet. I was 22 at the time. The guy was acting a little weird, so I watched him for a bit. I guess he didn't notice me because he walked into the candy section and grabbed 2 Snickers. 2. He put one in his pocket and went to pay for the other. People, right? My first job was at a local gas station. I was 18 and worked there for about 2 years, and it will always remain as the worst job I've ever had. I have quite a few stories, so I'll just list them as I remember them. For the record, I'm female. Yes, this is important. I would frequently be the only one to take out outside or inside trash. One night I was hauling my cart between pumps, picking up loose garbage, when a man, looking to be around late 20s, early 30s, approached me and asked if I had a boyfriend. Immediately feeling uncomfortable, I laughed nervously and said no, which I regret, but to be honest, I doubt saying yes would have made him leave me alone. He then proceeded to ask if I was 15, all while following me very, very closely. I told him no, dropped the handle of my cart, and went inside, where I could be around people. I hid in the kitchen until he left. A man, who was obviously high on something, made me watch him try on cowboy hats while asking if he looked fashionable. He then proceeded to buy every single bottle of Pepsi we had. The cashier had to help him carry it out in boxes. He was with a random old white guy who kept running his hand up and down his back. It was strange, but luckily they seemed pretty harmless. Had a man whip out his cell phone and record us without our consent. He had read my name tag, and so he kept screaming across the store, "Hey, my name," and would not leave us alone. We had to call the cops. He then proceeded to try and get in a physical fight with one of our new cooks, who was a hot-headed teenager that I went to school with. It was a mess, to say the least, but luckily no one got hurt. When I went to clean the bathrooms one night, I came across a regular who was pretty infamous for having sex with truckers outside in the parking lot and hanging around all hours of the day stealing things. She was really strange, but overall harmless. She was wearing a cheap wig that wasn't on properly, and her face was bright red. She'd been crying. I tried to avoid her because it was an overall uncomfortable situation, but she called me over and asked if she was pretty. I told her she was because she seemed like she could use it. She smiled, cleaned up, and left. Didn't see her again after that until she returned a few months later with a shaved head.